You saw that piece yesterday, I know, in the front page of the LA Times. It was an expansive piece of work, reportorial work. I mean, there's a lot of getting of documents. They had to really do some digging. I wonder if you could give us a sense of, I know this is just one shelter they focused on in Los Angeles, but I thought it was emblematic of a problem because they had held the shelter out as a new expansion, new monies directed there, a new kind of ethic behind it, and it turns into a place that is essentially, it's a death camp for animals.
Yes, and one of the saddest things was to note that their kill rate, and one of my, by the way, I think I've mentioned before, I'm so in love with the Los Angeles Times just because of their willingness to feature animal issues as part of the public conversation. And the as you mentioned, it was on the front page yesterday, above the fold, and then there was a double page spread. And it mentioned that it was talking about the fact that the Lancaster shelter has this very high kill rate. They use the word euthanasia, and you'll hear me say many times, I wish we would stop using that word when we are talking about healthy beings who want to live. Because if you look up euthanasia in the dictionary, it talks about mercy killing. It talks about when the being would be better off dead, not when...
Yeah, putting some creature out of its misery type thing. But these are animals that are perfectly healthy, magnificent, full of life. In fact, put in that shelter, I don't mean to cut you off, but I also feel so passionately about this, that put in the shelter by many rescue groups. They go, well, we'll put them there, hope that they can be adopted, but we'll come back and get them in 48 hours, in 72 hours, in 1 week, whatever the time is, that clock that runs before they are put down. And yet this shelter didn't respect any clock, didn't respect any connection with any rescue group, and in fact, just was in the business of, it was like a death mill.
Yeah. And the sad thing is, if people, I've got that, the article, actually, I've got it printed out on the DawnWatch Facebook page.
And Tony, maybe you can rally that article. I don't know if you can. It's the LA Times. Oh, you don't have the, you're not.
If you go to the DawnWatch Facebook page, it's right near the top there.
Anyway, everybody can find it. There are DawnWatch Facebook.
It's easy to find. But when you go to the online version of the article, you'll see videos that some of the rescuers had. There's one heartbreaking video of a young dog named Pickles, who the rescuer had just made this video because this adorable German Shepherd puppy, 7 months old, hadn't been adopted. And she says, oh, I'm going to get Pickles out there into the world with this adorable video of me rubbing his tummy, etc. And the next day, the shelter had killed Pickles. So that's watching those sort of videos. It's rough. But the good news is that, these things, Gretchen Weiler, who was one of our links together, I know, used to say, cruelty can't stand the spotlight. And when you have the Los Angeles Times focusing on this, you're going to get change. So that's a blessing.
Yeah, I think that, thank you for some good news in all of this. I think it's terrific that the media does need to shine a light.
I intentionally came with lots of good news today, Mark. So
yes, I like to start by bumming everybody out so that your good news. Thank you, Tony, for rallying that. So your good news stands out even further. Go right ahead, please.
Well, the good news today is the existence of a wonderful author named Sigrid Nunez. And it was, of course, in the Los Angeles Times that I learned that her third book in a trilogy had just come out. And this book is called The Vulnerables. And I had on my reading list, there she is, yes, I had on my reading list The Friend. When I decide to read, it has often to do, it's not usually animal stuff that I'm looking for because that's my full-time work. And I just like to read good literature. And I saw that The Friend had won the National Book Award in 2018. And I like short books too. And so, she writes very short books, which she has in common with somebody who she obviously loves, which is, who is John Coetzee, and who's a Nobel Prize winner. And I read The Friend and could not have enjoyed it more, posted on my own Facebook page how much I absolutely loved it. And before we take that down, I want to put up this quote from it. But the other two, the Friend came out in 2018. What Are You Going Through came out in 2020, and The Vulnerables has just come out in 2023. And they all have an animal as an important character, but they're not about the animal. It's a little bit how I want to see the mainstream media, that it's not that I want them to focus on nothing but animals, but I want animals to be part of the conversation. And they always are with Sigrid Nunez. And I thought it was so funny that your last guest mentions that he takes his dog everywhere, which I tend to do. And Elijah McClain just decided he was getting up on the chair here with me for our interview. But this quote, if Tony wants to put it up, or I can just put my glasses on and read it. But if we put it up there, we get Mark's voice reading it, which is always the best. Shall I just read this quote from The Friend, which made me realize I was going to love it, and which I think a lot of...
Please, sure. Go ahead.
Well, okay. When I read this line, maybe he is going to... Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So one of the more famous lines from the book is, "Your whole house smells of dog," says someone who comes to visit. I say, "I'll take care of it," which I do by never inviting that person to visit again. And that's totally spoke to me, and I think will speak to a lot of people who are as in love with their animals as we are. And indeed, The Friend is she writes in a very conversational manner, and it's written to a friend of hers who has actually just killed himself. A lot of her books are about writing and the writing life, and she inherits this guy's Great Dane, and she's never had anything like this before in her life. So part of the story is about her interactions and struggles with the Great Dane, but the whole thing is incredibly touching. Then the second book is again about a dying friend. So for those of us who are at the time where we're starting to lose friends, and I certainly am, it's something I think about, mortality. The second book's based on that issue, but this time one of the characters is a cat who lives in the house, and that's, I liked it even better than the first one that won the National Book Award. And then The Vulnerables, which was written up in the Los Angeles Times couple of weeks ago. In this one, there's a parrot. And with every book, and I have a feeling with the author's own evolution, the animal discussions are getting more serious. And in this one, there's a line, I was listening to this in bed. I get my books out of the library. I download them from the library and I listen to them. And there's a wonderful actress who has read all three of these. And I heard a line that reminded me of a conversation I had been having a week ago when a friend said something about anthropomorphism. And that's a word, a little bit like euthanasia being used on dogs. It's a word I don't like because it is so rarely true. Animals' emotions are extremely like ours, and anybody who's lived with a dog or a cat or a parrot knows that. And usually, certainly people make up stuff about what animals are thinking that isn't true, but we do that about children. We do that if a toddler is crying. We don't know why they're crying. They can't tell us. We know they're sad. We might give reason for the emotion that is wrong. But the emotion is the same as ours. We don't have different emotions from.
I thought anthropomorphism is when you ascribe a sort of a human aspect to something that is not human. Emotion. Am I wrong? That's what it was.
It is, that is exactly true. And it's mostly with emotions. Oh, he's happy. And the scientists used to say, no, you're supposed to say he's responding well to such and such stimuli.
I see.
Yeah. Like you can't say your dog is happy. And it's, we could have a much longer discussion about this, but I'm so glad I've got Sigrid Nunez to put into words even better than I can. She just summed up my point so beautifully. And again, Tony, I'm going to ask if you can throw this up, and I will ask Mark to read it because it's just so.
Let me put my credibility glasses on so I can see it.
Okay, I've got mine here.
Anthropomorphism, some scientists said, projection. Not really friendship, but rather the elimination.
You know what, Mark?
I'm sorry.
Mark,
Yeah.
forgive. No, I'm sorry. And
Mark, could you do it a little bit more dramatic, though, this time, please?
I know, not at all. I'm horribly fallible. There's context
Of
to
course.
this. I've screwed up before.
You really have. You've been an embarrassment. This is all right. Go ahead. Now, now put this quote in context for us, Karen.
Thank you.
Right.
I'm sorry, Tony. He must. He's back there rolling his eyes. I know it. Before she starts talking about anthropomorphism, I always have problems with that word. Yeah. She's talking about the glorious documentary, My Octopus Teacher, which I suspect you've seen, Mark, and I know lots of people watching have seen. If you haven't seen it, you are missing out. I'm not particularly a documentary person. I like, crime drama. I love Courtney's segments. But this is a magical story about the relationship between a man and an octopus. And it's so beautiful. And we do see what anybody would think is a friendship developing between the two. So she talks about that. And then comes this paragraph that I've ridiculously cut out, which I'm going to get you to read now with that context. It's about when the octopus puts the tentacles around the man's hand and starts stroking him.
The My Octopus Teacher, it brought me to tears. In my case, that may not mean much because I'm so usually on the brink on things that, these sentient creatures. Any sentient creature, and I just feel that these creatures all have sentience. Okay, put the quote up and I'll read it real quickly. So in that context, you're saying at that moment where the octopus is...
just about their friendship.
Yeah. Anthropomorphism, some scientists said. Projection, not really friendship, but rather the elimination of a fear barrier and a familiarity that allows for greater intimacy. In a word, friendship. No? Meaning, isn't that what friendship is?
Of course it is. So I just, when I heard that line, I got up and I wrote it down and, checked to make sure it was right. But, and the last thing I want to share about the thing with Sigrid Nunez is she's not an animal rights activist, though she might be becoming one. Her books do not have an animal rights feel about them, but she has started to do something that somebody who she quotes a lot, mentions a lot, which is J.M. Coetzee. Those who've read him know that he puts very strong animal rights opinions into the mouth of one of his characters, Elizabeth Costello. She's rather strident and she's unpleasant, but everything she says is pretty well right, but she pisses off everybody by saying it. And I have to say, Sigrid Nunez has done a little bit of the same thing in this book. She has a character named Vetch, who's pretty darn unhappy that this parrot is living inside this apartment. And he makes his opinions on it clear, and Sigrid Nunez doesn't share them as her own opinions, but they're in there, and it's just fascinating stuff. But you don't have to be an animal rights person to love this book, and I'd love it if Tony would put up in the Los Angeles Times article. There are a couple of lines I would just like to share from that. And it's so perfect that we're talking about this. You had mentioned an earlier segment wasn't very Christmassy. Well, I just think any of this trilogy would make the most wonderful holiday present.
Did you send to Tony the piece that you're asking him to put up?
The lines, here we are. So, Mark, I'm going to.
So, what this feels like is these are two lines from, again, The Vulnerables.
This is from the review.
No? I'm sorry. This is the review of it. What this feels like is an eventful, rich, addictive conversation with your smartest, funniest, and most well-read friend. And in person, as in her novels, Nunez seldom states something she doesn't later complicate. Interesting.
And nuance is my favorite word. So
that's look. Most of life is nuance, but I'm out of time. Love that you shared this. So again, The Vulnerables is the most recent one. Is that it?
Yes, but I would I'd read all three of them. They're just, you don't have to read them in order, but I'm actually in the middle of The Vulnerables now, and I just don't know when I've enjoyed a trilogy like this. And they're all super short. I'm listening on tape, and they're about 5 hours long each.
The Friend, What Are You Going Through? And The Vulnerables. Those are the three. The Friend, What Are You Going Through is the second one, and The Vulnerables from Sigrid Nunez. And again, she's award winner. She just won another huge award, National Book Award. So, Karen, thank you so much for being with us. I will not see you before the end of the year. DawnWatch, the
I don't know
Facebook
why we've
page.
got the Media Awards gala up there, but we've got a picture of Winky Smalls, so I'm happy to see it.
All right. Winky is winking, as Winky does always. But also, again, you can follow Karen on Facebook under the DawnWatch banner. Thanks, Karen.
Or sign up for alerts at dawnwatch.com.
DawnWatch.com as well. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.